Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, in my opinion, is kind of underwhelming, and don't get me wrong, there were still plenty of enjoyable parts in this movie, and I had a lot of fun with this thing as well, but I just kind of left this movie feeling kind of indifferent about it. So let's talk about this thing. Now, as always, if you want to see what I gave this movie out of 10, head over to my shorts, TikTok, or Instagram, and check out my one-take movie review on this movie. But without further ado, let's talk about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. So this is obviously directed by Tim Burton, and this movie comes out a whole 36 years after that original film, which is a movie that I very much enjoyed. So when I heard they were coming out with another Beetlejuice movie, I was obviously intrigued because, you know, you have Michael Keaton, Beetlejuice, it's pretty tough to go wrong with that. And this movie was a lot of fun, and it did a lot of things right, but I still don't think it's on par with the original. So in this, we follow a returning Winona Ryder who plays Lydia, and her teenage daughter who is played by Jenna Ortega, as they return home after the death of Lydia's father. But once Lydia's daughter Astrid gets into some trouble, Lydia calls on Beetlejuice to help her. Starting things off with the good, and the first thing I have here is obviously Michael Keaton himself and this entire cast as well. But this is one of Michael Keaton's most iconic roles, and he slipped right back into the character of Beetlejuice without really missing a beat. Now, I will say he was a little bit tamer in this movie compared to the original, but he still did a great job in this one. He was just as funny as he was in the original, and he also gave this one a little bit of that charm that the original had. I mean, every time he was on screen, he was doing something goofy and wacky, as Beetlejuice is known for, and it was tough not to laugh every time that you saw Michael Keaton or Beetlejuice on screen. As for the rest of the cast who returned, they all seamlessly slipped right back into their roles just as Keaton did. Winona Ryder was the same old Lydia that you knew and loved from the original, just a little bit older now. She has like her own ghost show in this movie, and she's pretty much exactly what you would picture an adult Lydia to be. And also, it was just cool to see Winona Ryder on the big screen again, because I feel like I haven't seen her in a movie in a very long time. However, with all that said, I think the secret star of this movie was Catherine O'Hara returning as Delia. She was hilarious in just about every scene she was in, and she's low-key my favorite character throughout this entire movie because she was just super entertaining to watch in this thing, and it was fun seeing what her character was up to throughout this movie because she's obviously still obsessed with all of her art, but with her husband now gone, she gets into some shenanigans to kind of bring peace with that, and it's just crazy at the end of the day, and she was just a joy to watch on screen. And then we get to the addition of Jenna Ortega, and I think she did a phenomenal job in this movie. As this film went on, I just realized that, man, she is the perfect casting to play Lydia's daughter, because at times in this movie, she reminded me of a young Winona Ryder from the original film. But yeah, overall, I think the cast was awesome, and they were all super fun to watch on screen. Next up for the good, I have the set design / production design and just the world building in general. It was phenomenal in this movie, and Tim Burton always does a great job at creating and showing and immersing us in these crazy, wacky worlds that he creates, and it's safe to say that he does it again in this movie. I mean, he was able to take this world that he created 36 years ago and make it still look the same today, while also expanding on it as well. And one of my favorite parts of this movie was really the set design of the afterlife, because I thought that environment looked super cool. These environments felt real and lived in, even if they were a little bit wacky. And then you move on to the prosthetics and makeup that they had on all the dead people down there, and it just looked great. And in a world that kind of relies a little bit too much, in my opinion, on CGI sometimes, it was super refreshing to see a movie that had lots of practical effects in there. I mean, we even got that classic stop motion that Tim Burton is kind of known for. So yes, it was just really cool production design, really cool world building, and it just felt fresh. And also, in a movie about the afterlife, this thing still feels vibrant and very much alive. And finally, for the good, I have the humor. And I will say the humor was pretty on par with the first in this one. It was campy, it was goofy, and it worked most of the time. I really think the humor is a big part of the charm in these Beetlejuice movies. There are plenty of laughs throughout this entire thing. Now, obviously, a lot of the jokes do come from Beetlejuice himself, but I think each character kind of got their time to shine and time to make you laugh in this movie as well. As I said before, Catherine O'Hara, in my opinion, was one of the funniest characters in this entire movie. The humor does not take a step down or a step back. It is very much just like the humor that we got in the original film. Moving on to the so-so, and the only thing I have here is that they did repeat some scenes from the original. Now, I'm not talking about the times that they referenced the original in this movie. I was a-okay with that. I thought that was pretty cool. It was more the times where it felt like they just took a scene from the first movie and plopped it in this one and just kind of changed the font a little bit, if you know what I mean. For instance, the final act in this film was eerily similar to the final act of the first film, and they also kind of ended the sequence almost in the exact same way, in my opinion. And it was just parts like that in this movie that made this thing feel not as fresh and unique as I think it could have been. Now, don't get me wrong, this one did do some different things from the original, but it all kind of led to a similar third act, this time with just more characters involved. So overall, I just feel like this thing really didn't differentiate itself from that original in terms of the ending, because we ended up in the same spot that we did in the first one. And finally, getting into the bad, and the only thing I have here is the story. Now, I do think this is the biggest drawback of the film, and it's part of the reason why this kind of felt underwhelming to me. There was just a lot going on with this story, and it just felt really messy at times as well. We have that main story of Lydia saving her daughter, but there was also a bunch of side plots and new characters that took away from that main story, and some of these side plots just felt like they really didn't need to be in the movie at all. For instance, there was a storyline between Beetlejuice and Monica Bellucci's character that just felt like it didn't need to be in this movie at all, and kind of felt like a waste of a story, because as we approached the end of this thing, it really served no purpose at all to the main story. And that was really the case with a lot of these side stories. Once we approached the end of this thing and they tried to bring everything together, it was very much like, hey, we really don't need these side characters in the final act because they served no purpose or had no effect on the final outcome of this movie. We really could have just completed this thing with our main, cast of characters. For me, I feel like if they just would have stuck more to that main story, and you don't have to cut out all the side stories, but cut out a couple of them, I feel like it would have made this movie flow just a little bit better and not feel as overstuffed. But overall, I still had fun with this movie. It's got a great cast that was fun to watch and some good humor. But in my opinion, it felt like they redid a lot of things from the original and had a plot that just had too much going on. So that's why I say this felt a little underwhelming to me, and I wouldn't say that I prefer this one over the original. Those are my thoughts on Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, and as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, get your Eazy Apparel at shopeasyapparel.com. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.